Alright, what's up internet? So we'll be talking about Airbnb again today, and I've done a previous video where I talked about basic tips, how my Airbnb business called Alcoves got started. As a refresher, Alcoves is one of the oldest and most highly rated Airbnb outfits in the Philippines. We started in November 2011. Currently have over 1,000 reviews. Most of the reviews, the average review is 4.5 stars out of 5 for our 14 different properties. So we've been around a while, and these tips are a product of our experience, of our 8 long years hosting people, and it's been a fun ride, but there have been a lot of lessons along the way as well. Video is meant more for advanced Airbnb users, or you can also gain from it if you're just starting up, but a lot of them are really what we've learned from all of the nitty-gritty things we've had to do over the 8 years. The first tip that we have is how much should you be paying the owner for rent? Basically, how much should you be paying to rent a place which you will turn around and use as an Airbnb? If you're going to expand your business, like us, we started, our first apartment was owned by the family, but we wanted more apartments, we wanted to grow. So naturally, you will look to rent apartments, and that's fine. You tell the owner that, our business is short-term rentals, we're going to lease from you long-term, we're going to give you post-dated checks, good for this amount of money. You don't need to worry about it. Every month you pay, you just deposit the check and you get the rent. And then we will take care of finding people to rent the place short-term. So you rent units from other people and then you sublease them or you rent them out short-term guests. Our rule of thumb is the monthly rent you pay the owner should be worth 10 days that you are charging to stay in your place. So for example, you charge a guest 2,000 pesos to stay in your Airbnb. So 2,000 times 10 or 10 days is 20,000. You should be paying 20,000 pesos rent to the owner. If you are paying more than 10 days rent, we ourselves, Alcoves, does not continue to rent the place, or we say, sorry, it just doesn't work out. We can't make money if you ask for a higher rate. So our rule of thumb is 10 days worth of rent should be budgeted to the owner as his monthly rental. Tip number 2 is how much money should you be earning from that unit? So if you pay the owner 10 days worth, you should be earning at least double. So to go back to the previous example, if you're paying the owner 20,000 pesos rent, then you should be earning gross from that property at least double that, or at least 40,000. Anything below that, we just sort of decide that it's not worth it. There's a lot of effort involved in renting out your places on Airbnb, and anything less than double gross is just too little for us, and we decide, it's not worth it. Time to find another apartment. Tip number 3 is born from our experience. Both my brother and myself are lawyers, and we try to give ourselves as much flexibility in the contracts that we craft. When we prepare the lease contracts to the owners, we point out to them that yes, we are leasing your unit for at least 3 years. 3 years is the minimum term that we ask for, because all of the apartments that we get, whether it's family owned or whether we rent them from other people, we still renovate them before we lease them out on Airbnb. But we tell the owner that in this contract, we have an escape clause. Basically, for whatever reason, Alcoves, the lessor, the person renting the unit, is allowed to terminate the contract at any time. Wait, why would the owner agree to that? Alcove said 3 years, and then suddenly you are terminating the contract. That's not beneficial to me, the owner. The way we structure the escape clause is basically, for whatever reason, we can terminate the contract, but the owner gets an indemnity fee or a penalty clause of around 100,000 pesos. So basically, the contract is still win-win for the owner. He gets it 3 years. If he doesn't get it for 3 years, then the apartment got renovated for free, and he gets 100,000 pesos penalty clause. And then he can just turn around and lease the apartment again, because it's basically still brand new, still furnished, still renovated. But why does Alcoves insist on this escape clause? Because we want flexibility. You never know, for whatever reason, the apartment might be a loser. It just doesn't work out. People don't want to rent it. People don't want to stay there. And so instead of being locked into a 36-month or 3-year contract, we will just pay 100,000, which is equivalent sometimes to 3 months worth of rent or 2 months worth of rent. And that's it. No hard feelings on either side. It just didn't work out. And so it's beneficial for both alcoves and the owner to have the escape clause. And to be honest, you've never actually had to use it. But again, you want to plan for flexibility and you want to anticipate problems and address them before they happen. Tips 4 and 5 have to deal with locks. And locks sound like super mundane things, but being a successful Airbnb is really all about the mundane things. What things can go wrong, and so I will prepare in advance so that I am ready when things go wrong. So tip number 4 is about the outer door or the main door to your apartment. And for alcoves, we always put keypad lock. Basically, these locks, you don't need a key to get in. You just need the code. And once you enter the code, you turn the handle, you turn the lock, and the door opens. And that's it. I can't emphasize this enough. If you only take one thing away from this video is use keypad locks on your main door because there are a lot of advantages. If you give out keys, keys are easily lost, keys are easily duplicated. So they're not very safe. The problem with having, let's say, a 2-bedroom apartment, you're going to have 6 guests, 7 guests there, and all of them will want their own keys. So you'll have to keep reproducing these keys. You have to keep giving them out. The guests will forget to give them back. The guests will lose them. Keys are a mess, man. And so to sidestep all of those problems, use the keypad lock. They allow keyless entry into the apartment. And another great thing about them is once the guest books, you just assign them a random number, a random 4-digit, 6-digit number. And so once they arrive at the apartment, they can get in just using that code. You don't need to be there at the apartment so that the guests can get in. And this saves you a lot of hassle later on when you have guests that arrive at 11 at night, 1 in the morning. And sometimes you just really can't be there to meet the guest, but they can still get in no problems with the code that you sent them to the keypad lock. Tip number 5 still deals with doors, but these deal with the inner doors or the doors which are inside the apartment, such as to the bedrooms or to the bathrooms. For these doors, we recommend you use vanity locks. What I mean by vanity locks are, these are the kind of locks that you could open from the outside, usually by you just have a key and then there's a notch and then you just twist the key and the notch and it opens it. Because we've had a lot of guests over the years that accidentally locked the bathroom from the inside. Or worse, we've had an experience where a guest locked a child in the bathroom and the child did not know how to unlock the door and the guest was freaking out because she couldn't get back into the bathroom to get her child. These things are not the fault of the hosts. It's completely the fault of the guest for accidentally locking the door. But that doesn't really matter because it's still the host that is still frustrated and has to run over there at God knows what time of the day. Again, to sidestep those problems before they happen, with vanity locks, the guest can unlock the doors themselves, but the vanity locks still allow privacy. You can still lock the bathroom, and when somebody turns the handle, it will still initially resist your turning of the handle because they are still locks. Tips 6 and 7 deal with doing things in advance. And tip number 6 is preparing an apartment guide. All the alcoves rooms have apartment guides where we put basic information such as the Wi-Fi hotspot, the Wi-Fi password, the landline number, again, how to use the keypad lock, how to commute, good restaurants in the area, where you can do the laundry, and really very basic information that usually the guest will ask you. So to save yourself the time of constantly answering the same questions and to save the guest time from having to ask them, we put them all in one apartment guide. Tip number 7 also deals with time management and preparing things beforehand is prepare your speeches. When somebody books, we already have a prepared email with how to use the apartment lock and how to get to the apartment, directions from the airport and things like that. When the guest arrives at the apartment, we try to meet all of our guests and we have dedicated staff called welcome specialists who have prepared speeches like, oh, this is the apartment and again, this is the Wi-Fi, these are the building rules and things like that. Do you have any questions? All of those things we prepare beforehand so that it's much faster. Communication time is greatly sped up because you basically just need to cut and paste the information that the guest needs. And number 9, something you'll learn if you've been doing Airbnb for a long time is that We try to treat the guests more like friends instead of guests. And what do I mean by that? A lot of Filipino hospitality revolves around being very deferential. So you call the guest sir, you call the guest ma'am, you basically kowtow to them and you bow down to them. And every little thing that they ask for, you try to accommodate. And we're not like that. Alcoves is not like that. Because you don't call your friend sir, you don't call your friend ma'am. What we try to do is we provide an environment where we would be happy to have our friends stay over, and we treat them like friends. When they arrive at the unit, we call them by their first name. It's like, hi John, how was the flight? And this is the apartment. You want to cater to the request of your friends. So if they ask for extra towels, sure, no problem. If they ask for extra blankets, extra sheets, maybe extra bottled water, yes, that's fine. There are Airbnb guests that abuse your hospitality, that are very rude, that try to take advantage of you, that are very in your face when if they book your unit, they think that that means you are their personal concierge and that means you are their indentured servant and you're basically their slave. And it's much easier to push back against guests like that if you treat them as a friend, and it's easy to draw the line and to toe the line and say that that's too much, that's enough, we won't do that. Compared to if you start a relationship with calling them sir and ma'am and being very deferential and bowing every time. Over the years, if you're in this Airbnb business long enough, you will encounter some guests that you need to push back on. And that's a good place to start, by treating them as friends rather than as people you need to suck up to. And the last tip is that communication is always ASAP. Always as soon as possible. If you look at our statistics on Airbnb, our reply rate is always less than 1 hour. And if you can imagine how hard this is to do for us, how difficult it is, we're on Airbnb, Agoda, Expedia, we have our own site, we have our direct bookings that email us because they've stayed with us before. We have a lot of guests asking for our attention, but not just on Airbnb, but on other sites as well, we always try to reply as soon as possible. And that's why on Airbnb, our response rate is less than 1 hour. Even though, again, we have 14 apartments, we have different people asking us different things. And why am I so obsessed with this rating? Because in December 2019, there are over 7 million Airbnb listings worldwide. How do you stand out? How do you make yourself look legit? How do you make yourself appear to the guest as somebody like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing, I want to book with him? One of the easiest ways, or one of the clearest ways to do that, is to reply as soon as possible. The sooner you reply to inquiries, to bookings, to any concerns, the more legitimate and the more professional you look. And you really do need to look professional because, again, there are so many Airbnbs now in the Philippines as well as abroad. So one way to stand out is to reply as soon as possible all the bloody time. The first thing I do when I wake up is check the email of Alcoves and reply. The last thing I do before I go to bed at night is check the Alcoves email and reply. And yes, it can get difficult. You're on the road, you're not in front of your computer. But again, if you want to be professional about your Airbnb, you do need to make sacrifices, and one of them is being available pretty often throughout the day. There's really no easy way to do it. You just need to do it yourself or to train staff like we have done, because we do have staff that helps us out with the emails now and the bookings and the scheduling. So either do it yourself or have staff. But at the end of the day, when it's Sunday and your staff is taking their break on their rest day, ultimately it will still be you, the host, who needs to reply. So I would encourage you to really get into the habit of checking your email, checking your Airbnb, checking your texts and your messages and things like that. Because that is one clear way to show the guest who's a bit on the fence that, yes, I will book with you guys because you sound professional. So that's it for part 2 of our Airbnb series. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. Do check out part 1 if you haven't yet, regarding the Airbnb basics and how we started with 1 apartment and now we have 14, how we grew these past 8 years, and how we established Alcoves as one of the oldest and most highly rated Airbnbs in the Philippines. I'm thinking about doing a video on nightmare Airbnb guests, because 95% of the time, Airbnb guests are great. I mean, to be honest, no lies, they're awesome. But there are some horror guests over the years, and I might do a video on that in the future. And do let me know if you would like to hear some Airbnb horror stories. So I hope that these basic tips help you. If you found this video helpful, please drop a like and hit the subscribe button. For your PC needs, consider buying from us, Hardware Sugar, at Lazada, or on our website. You can find links in the description below. And thank you for watching. See you next video.